you're new in town or just new to this whole podcast thing, you're tuning into Lore by Night, the podcast that discusses all things vampiric, with no fear of breaching the Masquerade. In this episode, we shall discuss the Laibon, a term employed by certain legacies to define the vampires of Africa. We will discuss their origins, motives, and what sort of cultures these kindred of the Ebony Kingdom live. For literally thousands of years, Kindred has robbed many a mortal life of their existence, forcing them to join the great clusterfuck that is the Jihad. Scattered all over the world, many of our ilk rule and dominate mortal society in a variety of different ways, some more subtle than others. We have spoken in great length regarding the clans and bloodlines of Kagne that played their part in establishing Europe, America, and India, and we even touched upon the Wong-Quay, the ghost demon vampire-esque hybrids that rule the Middle Kingdom, what we would call Asia, and how the Kindred and Quasian have been at each other's throats since the earliest days of our collective existence. But I have omitted something from you. We are not the only scions of the night that rule society. There is one realm that the children of Kagne are remarkably absent from. Sure, you can find small pockets of Ventrue and Malkavians that have made their mark, but they do not have as much dominance as the natives. Shocking, isn't it? A continent where the blue bloods do not rule supreme? Indeed not. A much stronger vampire breed claimed that monopoly long ago. But I digress. I say all of this as if to imply that these vampires of Africa are not kindred, but in a sense, the vampires I wish to discuss with you are very similar to you and I, but naturally hold a very different cultural outlook on what it means to be a vampire and how they became one of the damned. In that regards, they are extremely different from us Westerners. The kindred of the Ebony Kingdom, the vampires of Africa, do not adopt the name kindred. These legacies, their term for clan, much prefer the name Laibon. I was first made aware of the Laibon during our Dark Ages, where some had migrated to various domains in the United Kingdom, or the Baronies of Avalon, as Mithras would call them. Those that knew of these kindred viewed them as a single bloodline, which we now know is false, which you can accredit mostly to me. Anyway, African vampires nearly all referred to themselves as Laibon and certainly seemed distinct from regular clans, and that is because they are. Physically, they are mostly identical to any other person, whether they are male, female, or somewhere in between. As vampires, they share the weaknesses to fire and sunlight and react the same way you would expect a canine to respond. Claws and teeth are aggravating wounds to deal with, and like us, they sleep during the day and hunt and feed upon blood during the night. They fight their own jihad and possess disciplines that are both similar and different to our own, which I will elaborate during this discussion. In short, they are not some separate race of vampire like the Quasian are. You could view them as African cousins if you wish, but I suspect a fair amount of Laibon would be appropriately pissed by that outlook. So, a Laibon is an African kindred? No, absolutely not. Being an African vampire does not inherently make you a Laibon, regardless as to whether you were embraced as one there or travelled there as a regular kindred. As I said previously, two kindred clans that are known residents of the Ebony Kingdom, the Ventrue and Malkavians, are seen as outsiders and are distrusted by the natives. I will not attempt to be an Africa cultural specialist simply because the customs of the residents of the continent is so wild and varied that to explore that topic in itself would spend many nights to discuss thoroughly, so I will speak of the Laibon with a large generalized brushstroke. They're vampires that seek others of their kind, building communities of Laibon families drawn together to the expanse of modern change. I am told that the neonates of Generation 13 and the many Generation 14 thin-blooded are unable to notice this familiarity in the blood of other Laibon. Yes, the blood of Laibon does run that thin. Their communities are built upon the supernatural historical sources found in each region, with their own beliefs and behaviours are the result of their local histories, which varies from country to country and the legacy in question. The Laibon have a distinctly unique worldview, one that is forged by centuries of contact with the culture and supernatural of Africa. Their shared ancestry, similar but different cultures and fables are things that bring the Laibon together. The different legacies and the kind they once were are impossible to generalize more than what I have done already. If you remember our lengthy discussion regarding the Kathians, you may have noticed that there is a strong connection between the Laibon and Kagne in terms of belief, and to an extent, you would be right about that. Laibon belief dictates that they are in a physical state trapped between heaven and earth, a damnation that allows them to exist in both worlds. It is a balancing act between earthly death and the next world, whatever that may be for them. This, however, is wildly different from the teachings of Western vampires. Most kindred believe that if you do not find a balance between the needs of the beast and the slowly fading mortality, you lose yourself as the mindless starving monster that wished to do nothing more than eat and sleep. This is essentially the basics of the path of humanity, the road of humanitas. This also acts differently from the older Canaanites and those who are part of the Sword of Kagne, who are taught to abandon their humanity and follow one of the many paths to control your beast, whether it is devoting yourself to a god, learning to ride the beast, or transcend the mortal frame into something far more grotesque. These are extremely simplified descriptions of 3 separate paths of enlightenment that extend from roads that all Canaanites followed up until the Convention of Thorns and the 3 sects that were born thereafter. The Laibon do not treat their vampiric and mortal selves in total isolation and have them pit against each other, forcing one to erode the other. Laibons recognize the supernatural vampiric side as a conductor to enhance the human Earth self. They know that as the flame of morality is snuffed out, they are the smoke that lingers, hoping that one day they may be rekindled. The Laibon refer to these 2 parts of their being as the Auron and I, which the Western kindred would easily understand as 2 separate paths of enlightenment that Laibons follow. How the Laibon treat these elements would have an effect on both their behavior and their appearance. Now, I know that your mind must be aching already trying to work out how the Laibon would juggle 2 polarizing social and spiritual hierarchies. No doubt many a young 14th generation Laibon would quickly become a white as one trait wears away the other. The Auron, meaning heaven, is the spiritual side of the Laibon and reflects their infusion with their supernatural powers and their distance from the mundane. It does not assume or presume their religious affiliation, nor does it reflect or govern perceived goodness, for lack of a better term. It is just a reflection of the Laibon's association with otherworldliness. That being said, I have heard of some tales of Laibon who focus too much on their spiritual side or neglect the Auron, becoming grotesque and monstrous looking. I, meaning Earth, is the human side. It represents the connection the Laibon has with the Earth and the strength of said connection. Again, this does not assume or presume their religious affiliation, nor does it reflect or govern perceived goodness, but the morale of said actions. Those with a lower I wouldn't so much cause a messy scene during a frenzy. It is difficult for us Western kindred to understand what to expect in Laibon from seemingly abstract mindsets, so allow me to offer some guidance with 2 extreme examples. Let us say you are in Tanzania and you encountered at a distance a creature of vampiric nature, but with hooves, burning footprints and even a tail. It got closer, and you saw it had mouths for hands and eyes for nipples, horrific fangs and more. You would probably be slaughtered by this creature, for its strength would be unlike anything that you've encountered before, and depending on its generation, it may even overpower yours truly. But this is something that could happen to a Laibon who had neglected their Earth side, their I, and had grown obsessed with the Auron, the Heaven side. Although, from the image I had just presented, there is nothing really heavenly about it now, is there? On the opposite end of the spectrum, you may spot someone who you know to be a vampire but is mortal looking, but far too human. They may actually seem afraid or pained, for the worry of becoming more of a monster than already are just too much to bear. It is similar to the reaction many a Western fledgling actually to try and remain as human as possible, and the Laibon are no different. Perhaps these Laibon seek forgiveness, redemption, perhaps. What I've just described to you is someone who neglects their Auron and obsess over their I. Even they've put themselves in danger from other Laibon and hunters because of the reluctance to use disciplines. Many Laibon, especially the likes of the Kolo and Makajai, see these sort of Laibon as weak cowards. I'm glad you're listening, for you have noticed the 2 new words I just casually thrown into the conversation. The Kola can be viewed as Africa's Primogen Council. One elder from each legacy acts as the legacy's head, who follows out or totally ignores in some domains. The counseling of the Magi, who can be described as Laibon's prince in a domain. Magi, I believe, comes from the Buku word for king. The term Kolo can also be used to describe the eldest Laibon in a domain, as hinted by its application in the Chekawi word for parent or ancestor. The rank of Kolo is often seen as more important than Magi, for it suggests wisdom, honor, whilst granting authority, which I suppose is no different from our Primogens and Prince for that matter. The Magi has no say who can be elected to become one of the Kolo, for they have their interchangeable policies of who can apply. I'd imagine this wouldn't bother the Magi too much, for they are actually the eldest vampire in the domain and are more interested in upholding Laibon's society. The Magi is usually chosen by the Guruhi, one of the eldest legacies found in the Ebony Kingdom, and are said to be so named after a Gambian god. They are the vampire kings of Africa, and are said to be the first legacy to step onto the continent, which would make them sound like a vengeful offshoot. However, certain faults in their clan, weakness, and their discipline spread implies that they are more of a Nosferatu bloodline, despite they do not always look as hideous as I. The kings are closely allied with two legacies. First, you have the Osebo, who I am told are a Blucher offshoot named after the leopard of African legend. It would seem that my sources would be correct with this on the Osebo's origins, for the Pride are often seen as warriors and enforcers to the rules dictated by the Guruhi. I'd imagine they would make decent attempts at rulers as well, given they share the same fiery passions the Bruja. The other allied legacy to the Guruhi are the Shango, who are named after the Yoruba god of storms. They are sorcerers, judges, and assassins of the Laibon society. If that sounds familiar, it is because they are an Assamite bloodline, sharing the exact same disciplines and blood addiction. They are the Guruhi's right-hand men and women, providing them with counsel and magic. A legacy that does not see eye to eye with the Guruhi are the Zidundu, who are the rivals to the kings. The Zidundu are often referred to as shadows, for not only does Zidundu mean shadow in Bavali, but it is used to mock them. The Zidundu are said to be ruthless and ambitious, as they can command living shadows, yet lack a shadow themselves. Yes, these are a La Sombra offshoot. However, there was a bloodline that came before the Zidundu that may well exist in these modern nights. They are the Ramanga, and are shadow-wielding necromancers. The other necromantic legacy is the minor legacy, the Mlawatu. They are shunned more than any other legacy, for they are not as respectful with the deceased as other legacies are. The so-called Ghost Eaters are quite content with this though, as they much rather prefer to have their privacy, keep it to themselves and their studies, and avoid the jihad as they pursue their studies. The Mlawatu are a Cappadocian bloodline. That said, there is a lot of evidence to suggest that it is possible that the Impudulu came before them. There is another legacy that is the polar opposite to what you would expect from the parent clan, and they are the Nkulu Zao, one of the 4 Salubri bloodlines. The African Salubri variant has become the Soul Eaters that Tremere blamed them for all those many years ago. They have given up being healers, replacing their quest for Golconda with a fight for survival. A large chunk of the followers of Set reside in the Ebony Kingdom. Just like the main body of the clan, the African variants are cunning, devious, and obsessed with corruption. However, their long residence in Africa has changed them culturally, and they have little in common with their Egyptian brethren religion-wise. Still, they are as distrusted as any other Setite, and they fanatically work to hasten the resurrection of the Dark Lord Set. The Ishtari are a frustratingly annoying mishmash between clans Toreador and Ravno, taking the worst traits from them and magnifying them tenfold. They are a legacy originating outside of the Ebony Kingdom, like the Guruhi, and they are so named after a god, a Babylonian goddess of war and love to be precise. You can probably guess who I'm referring to here. I of course mean Ishtar. Jesus Christ, why are you so thick, neonate? Anyway, the one legacy that is actually a Ravnos descendant, as it were the Kinyonyi. The nomads take their name from the Lagunda word for bird, reflecting their tendencies to constantly travel, even more than the knowledge-seeking Akunanse, who I'll describe to you in a moment. They are knowledgeable mercenaries, the Kinyonyi I mean, selling their services to whoever may be the highest bidder and constantly travel. Like the Ravnos, the Kinyonyi can conjure things out of thin air through illusions. I am told that the Week of Nightmares did not fare too kindly to them as well. Whereas almost all legacies fight in their jihad, the Akananse have next to no concern with it. They are wayfaring strangers and storytellers who share the name of the wise spider god of the Ashanti tribes. I saw plenty of these Canaanites during the Dark Ages, some looking more bestial than others, which is part of their clan weakness and use of their signature discipline, Abombwe, which is either a variant of Protean or the original shape-shifting discipline, which would imply they are a Gangrel offshoot. However, during the Dark Ages, there was a legacy far more mysterious that possessed Abombwe and were closer to my clan than who are said to be the masters of this discipline. They are the Bonsam, bestial hunters who share a connection to the primeval darkness. They were and still are virtually unknown to Western vampires until a number of them emerged from the seclusion deep within Africa in the early to mid-13th century, fleeing from an unknown threat. Whilst it is up for discussion whether the Nosferatu-esque Bonsam is the parent legacy of the Akananse, despite a lot of evidence to support that is very much the case, I do know that the Bonsam would eventually become the Nakalpa when some Bonsam utilized the properties of Tzimisce blood, developing a uniquely stronger version of vicissitude. Yes, they are indeed far more monstrous than the parent clan. The parent clan obviously being Clan Tzimisce. But how is their version of vicissitude stronger, I hear you ask? Well, not externally, but I hear it all the same. In any case, I apologize. It is a natural reaction for a Western kindred to assume the Nakalpa's vicissitude is stronger when you discover that at its most advanced, the Nakalpa can alter the organs and body fluids, including the brain, which would no doubt cause all sorts of problems, to put it kindly. Regular Tzimisce cannot do this. Furthermore, the power Inner Mastery is the only power of the Nakalpa that does not require the Laibon to touch the individual. They merely have to think about turning the brain inside out and it will physically happen. I can tell by the look on your face that if you were capable of shitting yourself, you would have made a mess all over the carpet. Truth be told, so would I. This is essentially a different, wilder version of the same discipline. Whilst most Laibon disciplines are pretty much the same, some, such as Auspex and Vicissitude, are much wilder than the Kindred variant. Most, if not all, of the power names are different. Using Vicissitude again as an example, Malleable Visage becomes Chameleon's Kiss, whilst Flesh Craft becomes Corrupt the Mortal Flesh. The names are not the only things that change, mind you. Most Kindred have never given much thought about the properties of their blood other than it's a vampire thing. Many Laibon believe that their powers are gifts from the gods in aid for the work they do on the earth. Others believe that they are given these powers in exchange for the curse of vampirism. I know a couple of Kindred actually that argue this point as well. Anyway, yes, descendants of Kagne do believe this, and I'm not just being disrespectful to the Laibon by associating them with Kagne and not their alleged creator, Kagne, or Kagne. Oh, I'm not quite too sure how to pronounce the name, so I'm just going to go with Kagne. The story goes that a woman gave birth to two sons, one called Kagne and the other called Nakati. Both were fully grown when they entered the world due to some fetish each brother possessed. Kagne, the elder, insisted on pursuing a journey, probably to discover himself or something like that. Avoiding arguing with his brother and mother, he left with the fetish, using it to turn grass strands into knives, spears, clothes, and anything else that he may have needed. During this time, Dasse, daughter of the son, came of age to marry. Leopard asked the son for permission, but the son said he had to have Dasse's permission. Dasse admired him, but not enough to marry Leopard. Kagne would arrive in the son's town, where he would hear and learn of the beauty and wisdom of Dasse. The two fell in love, a love at first sight, you may say, and they would be wed, which was all accompanied by dance, song, and much celebration. There was probably lots of lovemaking, too. In the newlyweds' hut were large 10 mirrors covered with cloth. With the permission of his spouse, Kagne removed 9 of these 10 mirrors, each one revealing a different village or town, including Kagne's own. Dasse explained that together they would have 9 sons, each one would rule in these places. When Kagne attempted to unveil the 10th mirror, he was warned that the final mirror showed a place that no one would return from. Kagne, being an egotistical mortal man, looked into the 10th mirror, unafraid, determined to go there and prove his worth. After all, he had his fetish to protect him. Hilariously, such fetish did not help Kagne, for he was torn apart by a lion by a magnificent watering hole at the location. Kagne's brother, Nakati, wondered at the long absence of his elder brother and asked for his mother's blessing to go find him, for which she approved. With his own fetish, Nakati had everything he needed to protect himself: a cloak, dagger, and a spear. He would arrive at the Sun's town, where the sun, Dase, and the townsfolk mistook him for Kagne. Again, there was a celebration and dance for the return of Kagne. Wanting to remain loyal to his brother, Nakati would place Dase in a separate hut. Nakati would stare into the frightening 10th mirror and decided to go to the land that no one returned from, not to stroke his ego, but to rescue his brother. Like his brother, Nakati was ambushed by the lion by the watering hole. Unlike Kagne, he knew there was no point in fighting the lion that was clearly stronger than him. The lion knew this, and trapped Nakati with a pile of bones which contained Kagne's fetish and bones. Relieved, Nakati used both fetishes to bring Kagne back to life, in addition to the lives of 9 others, who would become Kagne's 9 sons. There was much celebration in the Sun's town, with everyone praising the heroism and return of Nakati, not Kagne, which angered him and his new 9 sons. The lion found the 11 men in the town and demanded to have the meat that was stolen from him, i.e. Kagne and his 9 sons. Kagne and his sons wanted to fight, but Nakati did not want that, for the whole town would feel the lion's wrath. He believed it was easy for Kagne to offer himself up and Nakati would save him again. His pride wounded once more, Kagne killed Nakati and destroyed his own fetish, offering his dead brother to the lion, who ate Nakati and the bits of the fetish. The lion quickly knew that he had been tricked, roaring an almighty wind that destroyed the hut Kagne and his brothers had been hiding in. Kagne attempted to use Nakati's fetish to protect him, but it was now just a lump of rock, causing him and the 9 sons to cower in the fear of the lion's might. The lion cursed the 10 men with a never-ending hunger that would forever gnaw at their bellies, and they were forbidden to return to the land that no one returned, shattering the 10th mirror in the process. Kagne's wife Dasi fled the weeping man in shame. The angry lion added to the curse, banishing the 10 men from the light, meaning that Kagne and his 9 retainers could only travel in the darkness, forever remembering the shame he brought upon the daughter of the sun. There is much to be said on the similarities between the origins of the Laibon and Kainite, but there is one large striking difference. It is a sad ego that birthed the Laibons, not angry jealousy. There is a sense of unity with this tale, even with the betrayal, the murder of the sibling, which is why I believe that Kagne would reflect on his crimes more than Kain would do with his, presuming that both creators are still active in these modern nights. Despite being a land cloaked in scorching heat and blinding sun, the Laibon of the Ebony Kingdom are forever under the iron fist that is the shroud of the night. Despite the need to cling to those of the same legacy, dark isolation is not so much choice, but a matter of destiny. They know the path they walk and know far more than us the importance of striking a balance between their natural and supernatural selves, as many of whom try and survive in some of the poorest and hostile environments imaginable to the average American or British person times 10. There is a lot of Kindred society can learn from the powerful and spiritually attuned Laibon and how one may come to terms with being a vampire, and yet so few of us know of them. Perhaps you can change that, neonate, and educate the uncultured swines. To be kept updated, follow the Law by Night VTM Twitter and Instagram pages to find out when we will upload each episode. You can also find out by subscribing to the YouTube channel and clicking on the little bell, as you'll be immediately notified when the latest episode is live. Until next time, farewell.